I want to bring in our all-star panel to react to all of the above. Main Street Asset Management CIO Aaron Gibbs and Geltrude co-founder Dan Geltrude. Great to see you both. And this is the first time that I'm having two people on set, so this is very exciting. But let's talk about inflation for a moment because it's really hitting Americans hard. And to the reporter's points, they're really difficult anytime, whether it's actual or a tax increase that's implied as a result of the IRS expansion. It's tough for people to swallow. I want to start with today's number because 8.5% year over year. Dan, that was better than what we saw last month, 9.1%. But having said that, some of the basic staples, eggs up 38%, right? Coffee up more than 20%, milk up more than 15%. Food prices are still rising, and housing prices, as we discussed in the previous segment, are still rising when it comes to rents. So people are still struggling. And just because gas prices have come down a hair from their record high doesn't mean that we are out of the woods here. No, not by any stretch. And when you look at it and you say, well, 8.5%. What has only gone up 8.5%? Everything that we look at has gone up far more than that. And then on top of that, if you look at how much wages are increasing, because that's the key here, Jackie, how much more are people making versus how much are things costing? And things are costing a heck of a lot more. So yeah, that's the issue, that difference. Aaron, I want to sort of get your read on what you think the Fed is, how the Fed will react to this, right? The market is certainly cheering in September. Maybe we don't see Jerome Powell be as aggressive, but he still has some data points to see. He has to wait for the jobs report, see what those numbers look like, the labor market as well. Are you in the camp that he goes 3/4 of a point or he brings it down? What do you think?
So I think when we look at the core, because that number was, even though the main CPI was down a little more, the core was still at 5.9, and that's also another number that the Fed likes to focus on, because that's the stickier part, right, the less volatile part. So I think that would mean that it's more likely that they still might go 75 bips. I know the market's rallying.
Yeah,
clearly.
The core number was not great.
The core number was not good. Now we still got one more month, like the CPI will report before they meet in September, so we still have one more month that maybe it'll come down. So I think I'm really going to make my bet when that number comes in. But certainly Wall Street thinks that it's a good thing. Yeah, and we were talking about interest rates, housing, people getting into the market. It almost seems like there are two pieces to this economy. There's, the supply side, there's companies, there's earnings, there's all these things that we're focusing on, and the data as well. But then, if things seem to be okay, and we are in a recession and we are slowing down and the Fed continues to hike and has an impact on the housing market, which has been holding up, then the whole house of cards collapses a little bit. Dan?
Yeah, when you look at what the Fed is doing, and let's assume they're going to continue to raise interest rates because they said they're going to until they can get a soft landing, no such thing, with inflation. So now here's what I say. You're raising interest rates. There are consequences to that.
Right.
It's not like, oh, we'll just raise interest rates. That solves all our problems. Not at all. You are trying to crush demand. And by doing that, what happens? You're slowing down the economy in a recession. It actually makes very little sense,
Okay,
Jackie.
so that's a great point, because as I was watching this, the readout this morning and everybody talking about it, I was saying to myself, this is demand destruction based on forecasts of what people think is coming. And that's what we're seeing with gas prices, right? And when it's demand destruction, to me, it's not genuine. It's not, they're not fixing it from the supply side. It's like engineering, right? The demand to go down is not, to me, it's not the way fundamentally to see a strong economy. And so, what say you?
Yeah, I think, look, no matter what the Fed does, we're always going to complain about them. I don't think anybody's going to be thrilled with what exactly they're doing. But yeah, they're in a tough position because a lot of it is coming from goods and services. And obviously the services is the largest part of the U.S. economy. And so how do you slow that down without hurting it and putting in a recession? And that's the nuance of another 75 bips. At least they can reverse course very quickly.
They could, and maybe they will next year. But having said that, we're waiting for this bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, to pass the House. It probably will. Having said that, that's a huge amount of spending right there, $740 billion. And then the CHIPS Act was just passed, another $230 billion. So you're adding a significant amount of spending, Dan, at a time when, this administration could have stopped spending and put less pressure on the Fed and kept things a little bit more balanced. I mean, I'm not an economist and I'm not Jerome Powell, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to kind of see that?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. The most disingenuous thing that's ever come out of the government is calling this the Inflation Reduction Act. That is it's absolutely the opposite. Think about what they're doing. You have the Fed on one side increasing interest to try to bring down demand. Then you have all this spending going on to do what? Increase demand. So we're in this rowboat here. Water's coming in, and we're bailing on the other side. Where do we get? Nowhere. Until they wake up and address the supply side, I keep saying it over and over, we are not going to get improvement here,
You're
Jackie.
right. All this money going towards the climate agenda and green energy when we could be incentivizing our oil producers to produce more. And that would, in earnest, that's what I mean. That would bring prices down the right way and allow people, to keep the demand as high as they would like it. Guys, we're out of time, but it was really great.